My name is Drake Montgomery, 35 years old, standing in the grand hall of what should have been the worst day of my life. Dad always said Marcus was the smart one, while I was just meant to support. Now, as father announced my brother would take over the billion-dollar company and receive the $50 million trust fund, I plastered on a smile and clapped. That's when she stood up from the back row, holding a document aloft, her voice cutting through the applause. Actually, if you're watching this story unfold, drop a comment about a time someone underestimated you. Hit that like and subscribe button for more family secrets that changed lives forever. The story begins long before that fateful day. My father, William Montgomery, founded Montgomery Industries in the early 80s, building it from a small tech startup into a multi-billion-dollar corporation with offices in 12 countries. Father was a visionary in computing technology, creating innovations that revolutionized how businesses operated worldwide. His success story was legendary, in business circles featured in Fortune and Forbes countless times. My brother Marcus was born 2 years before me. From an early age, everyone noticed his analytical mind. While other kids played with toys, Marcus disassembled them to understand their mechanics. He excelled in mathematics and science, skipping grades, and eventually graduating from an Ivy League university with honors before earning his MBA from Harvard. Father beamed with pride at every academic achievement, calling Marcus his legacy, his true successor. Our mother, Elizabeth Lambert Montgomery, was the gentle force in our household. Beautiful, kind, and surprisingly sharp-witted, she balanced Father's stern demeanor. Mom was the one who attended my art shows when Father was too busy, who encouraged my design interests when Father dismissed them as hobbies. When I was 15, cancer took her from us after a brief, brutal battle. Her absence left a gaping hole in our family dynamics, removing the buffer between Father's expectations and my different path. My relationship with Father was complicated at best. While he funded my education and provided material comfort, emotional support was non-existent. Every conversation somehow circled back to Marcus's accomplishments or how I should apply myself more like my brother. "Why can't you think practically?" he would ask after reviewing my design portfolio. "Your brother understood business principles by your age." Despite Father's pressure to pursue business or engineering, I followed my passion for art and design, earning a degree from Rhode Island School of Design. Father called it a waste of potential, but Mom's dying wish was for him to support my choices, so he reluctantly financed my education while making his disappointment clear. After graduation, I surprised everyone by joining Montgomery Industries. Not in finance or management like Father wanted, but in the creative department designing user interfaces for our products. Father viewed it as a compromise, but I saw it as an opportunity to prove my value on my own terms. What no one acknowledged was how my impractical design sense transformed our products. The Montgomery X7 tablet, our most successful product to date, succeeded largely because of my complete redesign of its interface. The press praised its intuitive, revolutionary user experience, but within the company, Marcus received credit for overseeing the project. I watched from the sidelines as he accepted awards and accolades for work that carried my unsigned fingerprints. For 7 years, I worked diligently improving our products while remaining in my brother's shadow. When clients praised designs, they were team efforts. When they criticized them, they were Drake's experimental concepts. I accepted this reality, finding fulfillment in the work itself, rather than recognition. Then came the embossed invitation, hand-delivered to my downtown loft apartment. Printed on heavy cream cardstock with the Montgomery Industries logo embossed in silver. You are cordially invited to a special announcement regarding the future leadership of Montgomery Industries. The date was set for exactly 1 month after Father's 65th birthday. The succession plan was finally being revealed, and despite everything, a small part of me hoped my contributions would be acknowledged. The day of the announcement arrived with perfect dramatic timing. A spring thunderstorm washed the city streets as my driver pulled up to Montgomery Tower, the 40-story glass and steel headquarters Father built as a testament to his success. Lightning illuminated the massive M logo. As I stepped from the car, an umbrella-wielding assistant rushing to shield me from the downpour. The grand hall on the 30th floor had been transformed for the occasion. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables adorned with white orchids and silver candelabras. Nearly 300 people filled the space, Board members, executives, major clients, investors, and press representatives all in formal attire, mingling with champagne flutes in hand. A photographer stopped me at the entrance. "Mr. Montgomery, a quick photo for the company newsletter," I obliged with a practiced smile, wondering if this would be my last official Montgomery Industries event. Regardless of the announcement, I had already decided that change was coming. I just didn't know how dramatically the universe would align with that decision. Little brother Marcus's voice boomed as he approached, champagne in hand, his custom Italian suit impeccably fitted to his athletic frame. At 37, he looked like father in old photographs, tall, broad-shouldered, with piercing blue eyes and a confident smile that conveyed absolute certainty in his place in the world. Marcus I nodded, accepting his too firm handshake. "Big day." "The biggest," he agreed, lowering his voice. Father finally making official what everyone has always known. "Are you prepared for your new role?" "What role would that be?" I asked, though I already knew. Marcus laughed, clapping my shoulder. "Always the joker. You know, supporting the vision. Your designs have their place, but running this company requires business acumen. Father knows that. The board knows that." He sipped his champagne. "There's no shame in being second in command. The company needs creative types too." Before I could respond, his attention shifted. "Senator Jackson." "Excuse me, Drake. Duty calls." He strode away, immediately engaged in political conversation, leaving me with unspoken words and the familiar sting of dismissal. As I moved through the crowd accepting congratulations for my brother's imminent promotion, I noticed a familiar face watching me from near the bar. Rebecca Wilson, my mother's former personal assistant and closest confidant. She was in her 50s, now her once dark hair streaked with gray, but her sharp eyes were unchanged. We had lost touch after Mother's death, Father having dismissed her services within weeks of the funeral. "Rebecca," I greeted her warmly, genuinely pleased to see a friendly face. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Drake," she embraced me briefly. "I received a special invitation. Your mother would be proud of the man you've become." Something in her tone caught my attention. "Is everything all right?" She glanced around nervously. "We need to talk. After the announcement, there's something you should know. Something Elizabeth wanted." "Ladies and gentlemen," the event coordinator's voice interrupted through the speakers. "Please take your seats. Mr. William Montgomery will begin his address in 5 minutes." Rebecca squeezed my arm. "We'll speak later. Just remember that appearances aren't always reality." With that cryptic statement, she disappeared into the crowd, leaving me confused as I made my way to the family table at the front of the room. Father was already seated at the center, with Marcus and his wife Jennifer to his right. The empty chair to his left awaited me. Father acknowledged me with a curt nod as I Saturday. At 65, William Montgomery remained an imposing figure. His hair had gone silver, and lines mapped his face, but his posture was military straight, his gaze commanding. He had built an empire through sheer force of will, and that will show no signs of diminishing with age. "You're late," he murmured, though I had arrived precisely on time. "Traffic," I lied, knowing any explanation would be inadequate. The lights dimmed, and a spotlight illuminated the podium. The company's elderly chief financial officer introduced Father with glowing praise, recounting the company's rise from humble beginnings to global dominance. A video montage played on massive screens, showcasing 4 decades of innovation with Father central in every significant moment. Mother appeared briefly in early photographs, but her presence faded from the corporate narrative after her passing, as though her role had been merely decorative. Finally, Father took the stage to thunderous applause. His keynote speech traced the company's journey, peppered with anecdotes of risk and reward. He spoke of legacy and future vision, carefully building toward the moment everyone anticipated. "A company is only as strong as its leadership," he said, his voice carrying, without the need for amplification. "As I approach a new chapter in my life, the time has come to entrust Montgomery Industries to the next generation." The room hushed in anticipation. Father's eyes found mine briefly before shifting to Marcus. "In every family, children develop different strengths. My firstborn Marcus inherited my head for business, my analytical mind, my strategic vision. My second son, Drake, inherited different qualities. Creative, artistic. He paused the words, carrying a subtle but unmistakable diminishment. In life, we must recognize our proper roles. Some are born to lead, others to support. The knife twisted deeper as he continued. Marcus has proven himself in every challenge I've set before him. Drake has found his niche in design. Each has his place. Father smiled at Marcus with unmistakable pride. Today, I officially announce Marcus William Montgomery as my successor, the new Chief Executive Officer of Montgomery Industries, effective immediately. Applause erupted. Marcus stood waving graciously. Furthermore, Father continued, after the noise subsided, I am establishing the Montgomery Future Fund, a $50 million trust dedicated to company expansion under Marcus's direction. Drake will retain his position in the creative department and receive a seat on the board where his unique perspective may prove valuable in a supporting capacity. The words echoed in my ears. Supporting capacity. My entire life reduced to a footnote in my brother's story. As the applause thundered through the hall, my hands moved automatically clapping while my mind detached from the moment. I had prepared myself for this announcement for years, yet the public declaration of my secondary status still cut deep. Father's words echoed, some are born to lead, others to support. The finality of it spoken, before hundreds of witnesses, made it impossible to pretend anymore that my contributions mattered equally. My thoughts drifted to the countless moments that had foreshadowed this day. When I was 12, I created a detailed business proposal for a neighborhood lawn care service, complete with pricing models and marketing plans. I presented it proudly to Father, who glanced at it briefly before setting it aside. Interesting hobby project, he'd said. 2 weeks later, Marcus mentioned starting a computer repair service for classmates, and Father immediately hired a business consultant to help him develop it. In high school, I designed a logo for the Montgomery Industries' 20th anniversary that the marketing team selected unanimously in a blind vote. When Father learned I was the creator, he ordered a redesign, claiming mine was too artistic for a serious technology company. The replacement logo was universally panned as corporate and forgettable. The Johansson account was perhaps the most painful example. 3 years ago, Johansson Global, a potential client worth hundreds of millions in contracts, was on the verge of signing with our competitor after Marcus's presentation failed to impress them. I spent 3 sleepless nights creating a revolutionary interface prototype, specifically addressing their needs. Without revealing I was the designer, I convinced our sales team to present it as a last-ditch effort. Johansson signed with us the next day, calling the design exactly what we've been looking for. At the celebration dinner, Marcus accepted full credit, claiming he had directed the creative team to revamp the approach. Father toasted his business acumen while I silently sipped water at the far end of the table. That night I nearly resigned, but a memory of Mother stopped me. Elizabeth Montgomery had been far more than the supportive wife portrayed in company literature. An accomplished software engineer herself, she had often solved technical problems Father's team couldn't crack. Yet she seemed content to let him take the spotlight, telling me once recognition isn't the same as value, Drake. Never confuse the two. In her final weeks, as cancer reduced her once vital body to a fragile shell, she called me to her bedside alone. You're more like me than you know, she whispered, her hand cool against my cheek. Your father and Marcus see the world one way. We see it differently. That's not a weakness, it's your greatest strength. She pressed a small wooden box into my hands, its surface carved with intricate patterns. Don't open this yet, she instructed. Someday, when you truly need it, you'll know when. Until then, trust yourself. Your path won't look like theirs, but it's no less important. I kept that box in my apartment unopened for 20 years through college and beyond. Sometimes I would hold it, tracing the patterns with my fingers, wondering what wisdom it contained. But something always held me back from opening it, some sense that the right moment hadn't arrived. As Father concluded his speech, and Marcus took the podium to share his vision for the company's future, I wondered if today might finally be that day. Marcus spoke of expansion, acquisition, market dominance, all in Father's language. Father's vision extended through a new vessel. The audience nodded approvingly. This was what success looked like to them. I maintained my composed expression, years of practice making it second nature. Inside, I was already drafting my resignation letter. Perhaps this public confirmation of my place in the family hierarchy was the push I needed to forge my own path completely. I had savings industry connections and a portfolio of designs that spoke for themselves. I could start fresh without the Montgomery name overshadowing my work. As these thoughts crystallized into resolve, I felt a strange sense of lightness. The disappointment remained, but alongside it grew something new possibility. I would congratulate Marcus, shake father's hand, and walk away from Montgomery Industries with my head high. No drama, no confrontation, just a quiet exit to begin writing my own story. It was at that precise moment of inner clarity that the trajectory of the day and my life veered wildly off script. Marcus finished his acceptance speech to enthusiastic applause, his charismatic delivery having won over even the skeptics in the room. He outlined an aggressive 5-year plan for Montgomery Industries, promising to double our market share and expand into emerging markets across Asia and Africa. The board members nodded approvingly. The press scribbled notes frantically. Jennifer, his wife, beamed with pride from our table, their twin boys fidgeting in their child-sized suits beside her. Father returned to the podium, inviting the executive team to join them on stage for a commemorative photograph. I remained seated, understanding that this moment belonged to the leadership, a category that, despite my new nominal board position, did not meaningfully include me. No one seemed to notice my absence as flashes illuminated the stage. A toast, Father declared, once everyone had returned to their seats. Servers rushed to ensure every glass was filled with champagne. To the future of Montgomery Industries under the leadership of my son, Marcus Montgomery. Glasses raised throughout the room. I lifted mine mechanically, the crystal cool against my fingers. As the crowd echoed. To Marcus, I took a small sip, already mentally packing my office. Monday morning, I would submit my resignation and begin fresh. The decision brought unexpected peace. Father continued with individual acknowledgments. Board members, key executives, major clients, each receiving personalized thanks for their contributions. When he mentioned my name, it was almost an afterthought. And to Drake, for his creative contributions to our product aesthetics. Product aesthetics. As though I had merely selected color palettes rather than revolutionizing user experiences that drove millions in revenue, I nodded, politely accustomed to the minimization. The formal program concluded, and the event transitioned to mingling. I stood to make my obligatory congratulatory rounds before making an early exit. That's when a clear, firm voice cut through the ambient conversation. Excuse me. Before we continue the celebration, there's something important everyone should know. The room gradually quieted as people turned toward the source of the interruption. Rebecca Wilson stood near the back of the hall, one hand raised, the other, clutching a leather portfolio. Her professional demeanor had shifted. Gone was the nervousness I'd noticed earlier, replaced by resolute determination. Father's expression darkened. This is a private corporate event, Miss Wilson. If you have something to address the appropriate channels? I've tried the appropriate channels for 20 years. Mr. Montgomery, Rebecca replied, her voice steady. Elizabeth made me promise that if certain events came to pass, I would ensure the truth was known. Today's announcement has triggered that promise. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Father's face flushed with anger, but before he could respond, Rebecca walked purposefully toward the stage, the crowd parting before her. Rebecca, Marcus interjected, whatever grievance you have about your former employment can be addressed privately. This isn't the venue for... This isn't about my employment, Marcus, she interrupted, reaching the front of the room. This is about your mother, the company, and the truth about Montgomery Industries that has been suppressed for decades. The room fell completely silent. Rebecca turned to address Richard Hamilton, the company's longtime legal counsel. Mr. Hamilton, I believe you should examine these documents immediately. She handed him the portfolio. They include notarized copies of the original partnership agreement between William and Elizabeth Montgomery patent applications, listing Elizabeth Lambert Montgomery as primary inventor on 12 core technologies, and Elizabeth's last will and testament, which was apparently never executed. Hamilton, a consummate professional, despite his obvious surprise, opened the portfolio and began examining the contents. Father stepped forward, his voice lowered but intense. This is preposterous. Elizabeth was my wife, not my business partner. She supported my vision, but had no formal role in this company. Rebecca stood her ground. That's the story you've told for years, William. Elizabeth allowed it during her lifetime because she didn't care about public recognition. But she was very clear about what should happen after her death, particularly regarding her intellectual property and ownership stake. Hamilton looked up from the documents, his expression grave. These appear to be authentic, William. If genuine, they indicate Elizabeth Montgomery was not merely your wife, but a 40% shareholder and co-founder of Montgomery Industries. Her patents form the foundation of our core products, including the Montgomery operating system. The revelation hit the room like a thunderclap. Journalists who had been packing up equipment suddenly reopened notebooks. Board members exchanged alarmed glances. Marcus's face contorted with confusion and growing anger. Furthermore, Hamilton continued reviewing another document. Elizabeth's will leaves her entire stake in the company to her younger son, Drake Montgomery, to be transferred on his 35th birthday or upon demonstration of significant contribution to the company, whichever came first. All eyes turned to me. I sat frozen, as shocked as everyone else. Mother had never hinted at owning nearly half the company. In all the stories Father told about founding Montgomery Industries, she was merely supportive wife and mother, not brilliant engineer and co-creator. This is absurd. Father sputtered, his composure cracking. These documents are forgeries. Elizabeth would never. She would, and she did. Rebecca interjected firmly. I was there when she signed them. I witnessed her will. She made me promise to protect these documents and reveal them if her wishes weren't honored. She turned to me. Drake, your mother knew your father would favor Marcus. She made arrangements to ensure your inheritance couldn't be redirected. She also knew you would need to prove yourself first, without the safety net of guaranteed wealth or position. Rebecca addressed the stunned room. Elizabeth Lambert was a programming prodigy who developed the core architecture of what became Montgomery operating system while still in graduate school. She met William when he approached her to commercialize her work. They became partners in business before partners in life. When the company incorporated, she agreed to a less public role, but maintained equal creative input and substantial ownership. Father's face had gone from red to ashen. For the first time in my life, I saw him speechless, cornered by truth he could no longer control. Marcus recovered first. This is clearly a coordinated attempt to undermine today's transition, he announced, attempting to regain control of the narrative. Drake has obviously put this woman up to this performance, to disrupt. I knew nothing about this, I said, quietly finding my voice at last. All eyes returned to me. Nothing at all. The Grand Hall had transformed from a celebration venue to something resembling a courtroom, with Rebecca Wilson as the unexpected prosecutor, Father and Marcus as defendants, and the assembled company elite as jury. Richard Hamilton continued examining the documents with professional thoroughness, occasionally consulting with his assistant, who frantically researched details on a tablet. These partnership agreements bear notarized signatures, Hamilton confirmed, adjusting his glasses. The patent applications are consistent with United States Patent Office records from that period. Elizabeth Montgomery is indeed listed as primary inventor on foundational technologies, including our proprietary compiler architecture and user interface framework. He turned to another section. The will appears properly executed, witnessed, and notarized. It explicitly states that Elizabeth's 40% ownership stake in Montgomery Industries, along with all related intellectual property rights, transfers to Drake Montgomery upon either his 35th birthday or, and I quote, demonstrated significant and innovative contribution to the company as determined by independent assessment of his work's value. A board member spoke up. When was Drake's 35th birthday? Last month, I answered automatically, still processing the revelation. April 12th, just 4 weeks ago. The timing of today's announcement suddenly made sense. Father had planned this succession event immediately after my birthday, after the date when Mother's ownership would have transferred to me under the terms of her will. Hamilton cleared his throat. There's more. The will contains a letter addressed to Drake. He carefully extracted a sealed envelope and handed it to me. My name was written in Mother's elegant handwriting. With slightly trembling hands, I broke the seal and unfolded the pages within. Would you like to read it privately? Hamilton asked quietly. I shook my head. No. I think transparency is overdue in this family. I began reading aloud. My dearest Drake, if you're reading this, I am gone, and you have either reached your 35th birthday or proven your exceptional value to Montgomery Industries. I regret not telling you this while I lived, but your father and I agreed our different roles in the company would be simpler for you and Marcus to understand as children. As you grew older, I intended to reveal the truth, but my illness progressed too quickly. You may be surprised to learn that Montgomery Industries began with my software architecture. Your father recognized its commercial potential when others dismissed it. His business acumen combined with my technical innovation created something remarkable. While William built the company infrastructure, I developed the technology that became our core products. We agreed I would work behind the scenes while he became the public face of Montgomery Industries. This arrangement served us well, but I've watched with concern as your father increasingly marginalized your contributions because they mirror my own strengths rather than his. He sees too much of me in you, the creativity, the intuitive understanding of what users need before they know it themselves. These qualities built this company as much as his business strategies, though he may have forgotten that truth. I leave you my ownership stake, not to create conflict, but to restore balance. Montgomery Industries needs both visionaries and pragmatists. Your brother has your father's gifts for business. You have my ability to imagine what doesn't yet exist and bring it to life. Neither should dominate the other. Use this inheritance wisely. Don't seek revenge or dominance, but partnership and innovation. Transform the company as only you can, not by rejecting its past, but by expanding its future. With all my love and confidence, your mother, Elizabeth Lambert Montgomery. The letter fell silent in my hands. Across the table, Father had collapsed into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years and more. The arrogance had drained from him, leaving only a man confronting the consequences of decades of deception. Rebecca stepped forward again. There's something else everyone should know. I've been monitoring Drake's contributions to Montgomery Industries since Elizabeth's death, as she requested. The Johansson interface wasn't the only instance where his work saved or advanced company projects, while others took credit. Elizabeth asked me to maintain records of these contributions as evidence of Drake meeting the conditions of her will. She produced another folder. Independent valuations of Drake's design contributions to major products over the past 7 years, conducted confidentially by industry experts. The Montgomery X7 tablet's revolutionary interface. Drake designed it completely, though Marcus presented it as his team's work. The security protocol visualization that won the government contract last year, also Drake's creation uncredited. The estimated value added to the company through his supporting role innovations exceeds $2 billion. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair screeching against the floor. This is a conspiracy. Father, tell them this is nonsense. Mother was a housewife who supported your vision, not some secret tech genius. Father remained silent, staring at his hands on the table. Father Marcus demanded. Finally, William Montgomery looked up, defeat etched in his features. It's true, he admitted, his voice barely audible, then louder. It's all true. The admission sent shockwaves through the room. Journalists frantically typed on phones and tablets. Board members huddled in urgent whispers. Elizabeth was brilliant, Father continued, seeming to age before our eyes. Far more brilliant than me, if I'm honest. The core technologies that built our fortune came from her mind. I marketed them, built the business around them, but she was the true innovator. He looked at me directly, for perhaps the first time in years. And yes, Drake inherited her gift. I've always known that. Then why, I asked the question, encompassing a lifetime of dismissal and diminishment. Because I was afraid, he answered simply. Afraid that acknowledging her full role would diminish mine. Later afraid that your talent would overshadow Marcus, who tried so hard but lacked that spark of genius you and your mother shared. I convinced myself I was protecting the company's stable succession by positioning Marcus as the clear heir. I've been wrong about so many things. Marcus's face contorted with rage and betrayal. You're saying I'm not good enough. After everything I've done to earn your respect, and you. He turned to me. You orchestrated this public humiliation, didn't you? Couldn't accept your place, So you had to destroy mine. I knew nothing about any of this, I repeated firmly. Nothing about Mother's role in founding the company. Nothing about her. Well, nothing about Rebecca tracking my contributions. This is as much a shock to me as it is to you. The truth of my words must have registered because Marcus's anger briefly gave way to confusion. Father reached for him, but Marcus jerked away, storming toward the exit. Jennifer gathered their children and hurried after him, the family drama overshadowing corporate politics. As Marcus left, the remaining attendees erupted into speculation and debate. Board members conferred urgently with legal counsel. Journalists attempted to approach me with questions. Through it all, I remained seated, trying to process 20 years of family history suddenly rewritten. Rebecca sat beside me. I'm sorry for the public nature of this revelation. Elizabeth wanted me to try private channels first, but your father blocked every attempt to discuss the will. With today's announcement, and your 35th birthday past, I had no choice left. Thank you, I said sincerely, for honoring her wishes, for telling the truth. I look toward Father now, surrounded by concerned board members. I just wish I understood why he couldn't see value in the qualities I shared with her. Sometimes, Rebecca said gently, the things we most admire in others are the hardest to accept when they remind us of our own limitations. William built an empire on Elizabeth's innovations, but deep down he always knew the creative spark came from her, not him. Seeing that same spark in you threatened the narrative he'd constructed about himself. I nodded slowly, pieces of my childhood finally making sense. The constant comparisons to Marcus, the dismissal of my creative achievements, the push toward business roles I was ill-suited for, all stemming from Father's insecurity about his own contributions versus Mother's. What happens now? I asked, more to myself than Rebecca. That, she said, rising to her feet, is entirely up to you. The chaos in the grand hall continued unabated. Board members argued in clusters, while PR executives frantically made calls attempting to control the narrative before news reached the financial press. Father sat alone, now seemingly diminished, as his carefully constructed legacy unraveled around him. Richard Hamilton and his legal team had commandeered a corner table document spread before them as they assessed the corporate implications. I remained at the family table, alternating between reading Mother's letter again and observing the fallout. Rebecca had stepped away to speak with Hamilton, providing additional context for the documents she'd preserved. The numbness of shock was gradually giving way to a complex mixture of emotions, vindication, anger, sadness, and something unexpected: responsibility. For 20 years, I had operated under the assumption that my role was peripheral, my contributions valued only when they served others' visions. Now I learned that half the company was legally mine, that Mother had believed in me enough to entrust me with her legacy. The weight of that trust settled on my shoulders, demanding a response worthy of her confidence. After several minutes of reflection, I stood and walked purposefully toward Father. Conversations hushed as people noticed my movement, anticipating confrontation. Father looked up as I approached, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "Not here." He nodded without argument, rising slowly to follow me. We walked to his private office adjacent to the hall, closing the door on the spectacle we'd created. The sudden silence felt almost physical after the clamor of reactions. Father's office reflected his personality, imposing mahogany desk awards and accolades, lining the walls, everything arranged with mathematical precision. He moved to his customary position behind the desk, but stopped, seemingly recognizing the inappropriate power dynamic, and instead took one of the visitor chairs. I sat in the other, the two of us facing each other as equals. For perhaps the first time. "You lied to everyone." I began, keeping my voice level, despite the emotion underneath. "About Mother. About her role in building this company. About me. Yes. No excuses, no justifications. Just acknowledgement." "Why? And don't say you were protecting Marcus or the company. I want the real reason." Father was silent for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice lacked its usual commanding tone. "Your mother was extraordinary. Not just intelligent, but visionary. She could see possibilities no one else imagined. I recognized that brilliance the moment I met her. It's why I approached her about commercializing her work. He looked up at me. I loved her for that brilliance, and I envied it. I could execute organized build systems, but the spark, the true innovation that was always Elizabeth. The company's success came from our partnership, her creativity channeled through my business acumen. And you couldn't admit that publicly, I supplied. Because you needed to be the genius founder. It started as a practical arrangement, he countered. In the 80s, female software engineers weren't taken seriously by investors. Elizabeth suggested positioning herself as supportive spouse, rather than co-founder, to make fundraising easier. But over time, you began believing your own mythology. He nodded slowly. The more successful we became, the harder it was to acknowledge the truth. Elizabeth didn't mind. She cared about creating, not credit. When you were born, I saw immediately that you had inherited her gift. The way you observed the world, how you questioned everything, your intuitive understanding of design. And that threatened you, I said, pieces falling into place. Because if I succeeded with those qualities, it would prove what Mother brought to the company was more valuable than what you did. I'm not proud of it, Father admitted. I told myself I was preparing you for the real world that creative types needed to understand their limitations. In reality, I was protecting my ego at your expense. And Marcus, does he know any of this? No. He idolized me, wanted to be exactly like me. I encouraged that because it validated my importance. He worked so hard to earn my approval to master business principles and leadership skills. I couldn't bear to tell him his mother was the true genius behind our success. The irony struck me. So you damaged both your sons, diminished me because I reminded you of Mother's brilliance, and set Marcus up to believe in a false version of you he could never truly equal. Father winced, but didn't deny it. I've made grievous mistakes. With both of you. And Mother's will. You deliberately suppressed it. Yes, he admitted. After Elizabeth died, I convinced myself that Marcus was the natural successor, that stability required clear leadership. The will complicated that narrative. He met my eyes directly. I was wrong, Drake. About many things, but especially about you. Your contributions to this company have been extraordinary, and I've failed to acknowledge them properly. The admission was 20 years too late, but hearing it still affected me. Not enough to erase the damage, but perhaps enough to begin something new. What happens now is up to you, Father said, echoing Rebecca's words. Legally, you control Elizabeth's 40%. Combined with your existing shares, you're now the majority shareholder. You could remove me as chairman, force Marcus out completely. The power that had suddenly fallen into my hands was staggering. I could dismantle everything Father had built, remove both him and Marcus from the company, rewrite the corporate history to center Mother's contributions. The temptation to exact that justice existed, but beneath it lay a deeper understanding of what Mother had actually wanted. That's not what she intended, I said finally. Read her letter again. She didn't want dominance or revenge. She wanted balance and partnership. What are you proposing? I considered carefully before responding. First, we tell the truth. About Mother's role as co-founder and technical innovator. About her patents and contributions. The company history gets rewritten accurately. Father nodded. That's overdue. Second, the corporate structure changes. I'll accept the board seat, but as executive chairman, not just a symbolic position. The company needs new direction, one that balances innovation and business growth. And Marcus, it was the most difficult question. My brother had spent his life trying to please Father, building his identity around being the chosen successor. Today's revelations had shattered that foundation. That depends on him, I said honestly. If he can accept the new reality and work within it, there's a place for him. His business skills are genuine, even if they were overvalued at my expense. But he needs to understand this isn't a competition anymore. We each bring different strengths. He won't accept that easily, Father warned. I know, but that's his choice to make. I stood, signaling the end of our private conversation. We should return before the speculation gets completely out of control. Father rose as well, hesitating, before asking, "Can you forgive me, Drake, for all of it?" I considered the question seriously. I don't know yet, that may take time. But I'm willing to try building something new from here. Not forgetting the past, but not imprisoned by it either. It wasn't the absolution he wanted, but it was the honesty we both needed. He accepted it with a nod, and together we walked back into the grand hall to face the future that had so unexpectedly arrived. 6 months passed like a whirlwind of transformation. The spring thunderstorm that had drenched the city on that fateful day seemed symbolic in retrospect, washing away old pretenses, clearing the air for truth and new growth. Now, as autumn painted the trees outside my office window in gold and crimson, I reflected on how dramatically life had changed. My office now occupied the corner suite on the 38th floor, previously reserved for the chairman. The space had been completely redesigned. Gone were Father's heavy mahogany furnishings and intimidating desk arrangement. In their place stood modern collaborative workspace with glass surfaces, comfortable seating areas for creative discussions, and walls showcasing product designs rather than personal accolades. The company itself had undergone equally significant transformation. One of my first official acts as executive chairman was to rename the corporation Montgomery Lambert Industries, restoring Mother's family name to its rightful place in our identity. The rebranding extended beyond the name. Our corporate history was rewritten to accurately reflect Elizabeth Lambert Montgomery's crucial role as co-founder and technical innovator. The business press had initially treated the succession drama as scandalous entertainment, with headlines like "Family Feud erupts at Tech Giant" and "Secret Will upends billion-dollar empire." But as we implemented substantive changes to company structure and culture, the narrative shifted to one of corporate evolution and progressive leadership. The transition wasn't smooth at first. Several board members resigned in protest, uncomfortable with the sudden disruption to power structures they'd long navigated. We replaced them with diverse voices, including respected technical innovators and design thinkers who brought fresh perspectives to our strategic discussions. Father had stepped back from daily operations but remained available as a senior advisor. Our relationship had entered unfamiliar territory, not exactly warm, but increasingly honest. Weekly lunches in my office became a time to bridge decades of misunderstanding, sometimes painfully, always necessarily. "I underestimated you," he admitted, during one such lunch about 2 months after the revelation. "Not just your abilities, but your character. I expected vengeance when you gained power. Instead, you've shown remarkable balance." "I had a good example," I replied. "Mother never sought the spotlight, but she never compromised her vision either. That's the legacy I'm trying to honor." Marcus's journey proved more complicated. He disappeared for nearly a month after the announcement, refusing all contact. When he finally returned, it was with legal representation, threatening to contest Mother's will and the validity of the documents Rebecca had preserved. The legal challenge faltered quickly. The evidence was irrefutable. The signatures verified the patent's matters of public record. Facing this reality, Marcus had two choices: adapt to the new corporate structure or leave entirely. After several tense meetings with Father, then with me, he reluctantly chose adaptation. His role shifted from presumptive CEO to Chief Operating Officer, focusing on the business execution at which he genuinely excelled while I directed overall company vision and innovation strategy. Our personal relationship remained strained, but professionally, an unexpected complementarity emerged. Without the pressure to be something he wasn't, a visionary innovator like Mother Marcus thrived in operations and implementation. He executed my creative directions with precision and added valuable, pragmatic perspective to ambitious initiatives. "We make a better team than I expected," he admitted grudgingly. After we successfully launched the Montgomery Lambert Z, won our first major product under the new leadership. The device integrated my human-centered design philosophy with his rigorous quality control standards, resulting in both critical acclaim and record sales. "That was always Mother's point," I told him. "The company needs both of us, just in the right roles." The most profound personal change came 3 months after the revelation. On a quiet Sunday evening, I finally opened the wooden box Mother had given me 20 years earlier. Inside lay a smaller version of the documents Rebecca had presented: partnership agreements, patent applications, and technical notebooks filled with Mother's elegant handwriting and intricate diagrams. Beneath these, I found a handwritten note and a small silver key. This key opens the storage unit listed below the note read. There you'll find my complete archives, every idea, prototype, and vision I never had time to develop. Some may be outdated now, but others might still have potential. They're yours now to build upon or simply to understand your heritage more fully. Create something wonderful, Drake. I'll be watching from wherever I am. The storage unit contained dozens of carefully preserved boxes, a meticulous record of an innovative mind at work. Some concepts were indeed obsolete, but others proved remarkably prescient interface ideas that anticipated technologies only now becoming feasible, algorithmic approaches to problems still considered unsolved. Most valuable weren't the specific inventions, but the thought process behind them, Mother's unique way of seeing possibilities others missed. These archives became the foundation for the new Montgomery Lambert Innovation Lab, an independent research division one established with complete creative freedom from quarterly profit expectations. The lab's mission reflected Mother's approach, human-centered technology that solved real problems rather than creating artificial needs. Today, as I prepared for the company's first annual meeting under my leadership, I felt a sense of completion. Not an ending, but the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. The journey from overlooked second son to company leader had been painful, but ultimately transformative, not just for me, but for everyone involved. Mr. Montgomery Lambert, my assistant, called through the intercom, using the hyphenated surname I'd legally adopted to honor Mother's legacy. They're ready for you in the conference room. Thank you, Sarah. I'll be right there. Before leaving, I touched the framed photograph now prominently displayed on my wall. Mother, in her early 30s, standing before a whiteboard covered in code. Her expression, one of focused intelligence and quiet confidence. We did it, I whispered to her image. The conference room fell silent as I entered. Executives, board members, and key stakeholders filled the long table with Father and Marcus seated near the front. The atmosphere carried none of the tension of our last major gathering. Instead, there was anticipation for the new fiscal year's vision. Thank you all for coming, I began. Today marks not just the beginning of a new business cycle, but the continuation of a transformation we've undertaken together. 6 months ago, we rediscovered our company's true origins and had to confront uncomfortable truths. Now we're building something stronger on that foundation of honesty. I outlined our impressive quarterly results: market share up 17%, employee satisfaction at record levels, innovation pipeline fuller than ever before. But the numbers weren't the most important message. The greatest lesson I've learned through this journey is that authentic success never comes from pretending to be something you're not. For years, I tried to fit myself into a role that wasn't mine, while the company itself maintained a narrative that erased crucial contributions. The cost of those pretenses was immense, not just personally, but in missed opportunities and unrealized potential. Looking directly at Father, then Marcus, I continued. True strength comes from recognizing our genuine gifts and limitations, then building structures that leverage complementary talents. No single person, not me, not anyone, possesses every quality needed for complex success. The art is in the balance, the partnership, the whole, that exceeds its parts. Montgomery Lambert Industries isn't just a new name, it's a new philosophy, one that values both innovation and execution, creativity and disciplined vision and practicality. We're stronger together than any of us could be alone. The presentation concluded to genuine applause. As attendees broke into discussion groups for the afternoon sessions, I found myself standing near the refreshment table with Father. Your mother would be proud, he said quietly. Not just of the company's success, but of how you've handled everything, the grace of it. I hope so, I replied. I think she'd be pleased to see all of us finding our proper places at last. Even me, he asked, with uncharacteristic vulnerability. I considered the question honestly. Especially you. Admitting mistakes takes more courage than maintaining power. You're doing important work now, just different from before. As we parted ways, I felt the completion of a circle that began 20 years ago with Mother's final gift. The box had contained not just documents, but possibility, the chance to reclaim my inheritance of innovation and creativity. More importantly, it offered the opportunity to build something better than what came before. not through revolution, but through evolution and integration. The journey from underestimated son to company leader had taught me that true strength isn't found in dominance or control, but in authenticity and balance. By embracing my natural gifts rather than fighting to be someone else, I'd found not just professional success, but personal peace. That evening, as the setting sun bathed my office in warm light, I drafted a personal note to send with our quarterly shareholder report. The greatest innovations often come from unexpected sources. Sometimes the quiet voice in the room holds the most revolutionary idea. Sometimes the path that seems like a detour leads to the most important destination. Our company's new chapter builds on this understanding that brilliance wears many faces, that leadership takes many forms, and that our greatest potential emerges when we have the courage to be authentically ourselves. If you've ever been underestimated or felt forced into a role that didn't fit your true talents, I hope this story resonates with you. Have you experienced a moment when someone finally recognized your unique contributions, or found strength in staying true to yourself despite pressure to conform? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey of reclaiming one's rightful place and finding balance between different strengths spoke to you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need this message today. Your support helps these stories of transformation reach those who need them most. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery and redemption.